Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I put on bug spray today and I'm still getting eaten, so get ready to watch me swat. I am ready to do my first impressions on this bad boy. This is the Artisan Cutlery Centauri. It is a Ray Laconico design. It was loaned to me for review by my best buddy, Kyle from DTOM Knives and Gear. He will be linked down below. If somehow you're aware of me and not aware of him, even though I mention him all the time and borrow stuff from him all the time and send him stuff all the time, check him out because he has an awesome YouTube channel where he reviews stuff like this. This is the first artisan knife in quite some time that I have found myself really intrigued by. In fact, there's been more than one occasion where I have almost just bought one of these to check out. I may end up having one at the end of this. We'll see. Time will tell. But so far I'm really liking it. As I said, it's a Ray Laconico design. It's really well made, and it's just an interesting front flipper for me. I feel like in my head, most front flippers are relatively small. Like when I think front flipper, I think smaller knife, like knife that I would typically carry as a secondary, whereas this is definitely primary size knife for me. And so I'm kind of liking that about it, and it came at a good time because I just pre-ordered the new Vero Axon, which is a front flipper, and is like a 3.4 inch blade, I think, and should be kind of similar to this in size. And part of me was like, am I gonna like a front flipper that big? But I like front flippers that big. So let's talk about materials, and then we'll get into what my experiences have been with it thus far. And yeah, this is just a first impressions. So as always with my first impressions, I leave it open so that at the end of at least a week with the knife, carrying it a little bit, using it a little bit, feeling it out, playing with it a lot, if anything changes, then I want to be open about that. And oftentimes I find that things are still pretty much the same as I thought in my first impressions, but now and then things do change, and I do find things that either make a knife for me and I wasn't sure about it in the beginning and then I end up loving it, or a knife that I was pretty excited about in the beginning, I find through an actual week of carry and use I'm not really that big a fan of. So as always, that's the way the first impressions work here. So materials wise, we're looking at a carbon fiber show scale. The carbon is done really well. No voids or anything. It's finished nicely. I like that it's a nice matte carbon. I prefer dry or matte carbon over wet or glossy carbon. I think it looks really nice. We've got this milled line through here that gives it a little bit of extra grip in the hand and just aesthetically does something for it. Lock side is titanium. We have a titanium pocket clip. We have a stainless steel lock bar insert, which doubles as an over travel stop. And backspacer, also going to be titanium. That's where it says Laconico on it. I was doing that upside down for you, wasn't I? That's where it says Laconico. And yeah, I think the construction, the materials we're playing with here are very nice. The blade steel is going to be CPM S35VN. It is stamped real tiny in the corner, China. So if you're one of those only US knives, this is an Artisan. It isn't for you. It is serialized, which is pretty interesting as well. This one's serial number 1839G. So I don't know whether that means that they made at least 1,839 of these, or what the G stands for. I don't know. One thing worth mentioning as well, this knife is offered in 2 blade steels. So you can get this one, S35VN, or for the same price, you can get the one in Damasteel. I believe, don't quote me on this because I'm not 100% certain, but I think the Damasteel one is a VG10 based Damasteel, which would make this S35VN better if you're going to be using this knife. But if you're getting this not to like hard use it, and you like it for its looks and for the fidget factor and all of that, then it's a really cool looking Damasteel, and to get it for the same price is kind of a cool thing. So yeah, let that be worth whatever it's worth. One thing that's interesting to me as well that I didn't notice right out of the box when I wasn't looking at it close enough or kind of in the right light, but the titanium on the lock side, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but it's got just like these really fine mill pass marks in it, and it gives it just a little bit of texture that I like. It just doesn't quite feel like glassy, like slick in hand. It's got a little bit of texture to it, but it's not too much texture at all, not even close. Like it's feels really, it's pleasant in hand. And then that finger, or that groove in the carbon fiber as well, I feel like does give me a little better purchase on the knife. Anyway, so that's the materials we're playing with. They're all finished well, they're all put together well. The knife came to me perfectly centered. The action, as you've seen as I've been playing with it, it's really drop shutty, it's on bearings. Everything about it is very smooth, fluid. The detent is dialed very well for this action. I can front flip it reliably 100% of the time. I have not failed on this front flipper yet, and I'm pretty good at front flippers. I certainly don't struggle with them like I know some people do, but I've had others where every now and then I slip off of it, and this one, it's angled well. The tang comes up kind of just high enough to really get a good amount of leverage on it. The detent is crisp but not overly tight or rough. So yeah, it's going very well. The pocket clip, I would say, is just a point of being fine for me on the knife. I don't love the pocket clip. I think it looks good. I think it goes okay in pocket. It's not my favorite, but it's certainly not like a flaw of the knife. Yeah, I think the pocket clip is just kind of fine. But I guess let's talk about carry, then ergos, then cutting. Carry, this knife carries really, really well. It's very slim. It's more slim than I was expecting it to be. I like when knife makers don't use overly thick handle scale materials for no reason. This knife doesn't need to have thick handle scales, and I like that it doesn't. I also like that the carbon fiber side is just pure carbon fiber, which keeps the weight down. This knife is lighter and slimmer by far than I was expecting it to be before having it in hand. And the blade stock is certainly not thin. It's not thick either. I think it's kind of just right for the design of this knife. And so the fact that you're getting a reasonable blade stock that's not like flimsy thin, and you're getting nice, appropriate thickness handles, it works quite well. So in pocket, it's very pleasant to carry. I would personally like it a notch better if it had a good deep carry clip on it, because I prefer deep carry, but that's my preference. And on a titanium frame lock, like, the common thing is to do a milled titanium clip. So I get what they're doing here, and to a lot of people that's going to make it seem like it's worth more. So understandable. Yeah, so carry's very good. I really have enjoyed this knife in pocket. I've carried it as a primary for an entire day so far. 3/4 of a day, if I'm being honest, because I can't kick the Rec PM2 out of the pocket just yet. But anyways, I've carried it for most of a day, and I found that it did great. I ran errands with it in my pocket all day. It wasn't a bother. I was wearing pretty thin shorts, which a lot of like bigger primary knives, I feel more in shorts like that than I would if I was wearing jeans or something, and it just really wasn't bothersome at all. So ergos, let's talk about. There's one thing on the knife so far that I find to be less than ideal ergonomically, but it's not horrible. It's just a little bit of an offender. And this is common. Where the frame lock is cut right here, this corner is just, I would love it if they just knocked that down. It's not like, ooh, that's going to cut me sharp, but it's certainly, ooh, that's uncomfortable sharp. And so if I position my fingers right, I don't feel it. And the handle is neutral enough that I kind of can go anywhere and it feels the same. So if I choke up so that that spot lands right between my foremost finger and my second finger, then it's fine. Then I don't feel it at all. But where I naturally find myself wanting to go, it goes kind of right in the middle of that foremost finger, like where it's meeting the knife. And that's right where I'm applying pressure if I'm in a saber grip, because I'm pushing down and it's like pinching here. And so I feel that a lot. So I have to be cognizant of where that is and place my hand accordingly. But at least my hand isn't like, it doesn't have to be there. I can get around it. And when I choke up, I do get a little more control. So I get that. I can choke back behind it and it still feels very usable, locked in, indexed. So it's a small point, but I would change that. Other than that, this handle is just, it's done really well. The corners aren't super knocked down to the point where they're round, but they're certainly not sharp anywhere. Everything is chamfered fairly well. It just feels comfortable to me, and it's nice and neutral. I can go anywhere. It's thin without being uncomfortably thin, like profile-wise this way. Yeah, I like it. It's not an ergonomic dream, but for how kind of cool this design looks and how light it is, how slim it is, I feel like it's pretty good in hand considering all of those other things. Oftentimes when you make a knife really thin and light and stuff in pocket, then ergonomically it's not as fun to hold on to because you've had to kind of make some concessions there. This one I think they've struck a pretty good balance there. Cutting. So this one is S35VN. Sometimes I hate on S35VN, mostly to make Chris Reeve fanboys mad, because I love doing that. But I like S35VN. It's a good steel. In fact, it's better than a lot of alternative steels that are oftentimes offered, even at this price point. So these are, I think, about $200, and S35VN, carbon fiber, titanium, like, it kind of works for me. The edge is done well. It's very sharp. This is the factory edge. I can tell just by looking at it. This hasn't been sharpened, and it's a good sharp edge. I don't have any complaints with how sharp this is from factory. The thinness behind the edge feels thinner than I was expecting it to be, frankly. I wouldn't call it like one of the thinnest knives I've handled, but it's quite thin right behind the edge. It does thicken up relatively quick, but it's a nice flat grind. We've got this really pretty swedge on top that I think looks very good. Sorry, the blade's pretty smudgy right now, but I like the swedge. I think the blade shape is very functional. You've got a nice little bit of belly with kind of some flat here, but it's just a very gradual belly there. And then the tip is very pointy. It's a very pokey, stabby tip, which is going to make piercing and getting into material very easy. And for the type of knife this is, being this kind of thin, almost gentlemanly looking with the materials that are used here and the fit and finish and all that, and kind of fidgety, this isn't going to be like an outdoorsy, hard use knife. This is going to go through a lot of boxes and letters and envelopes and stuff, and I think this blade is going to do excellent for it. It's still fairly strong out to the tip from what I can see. I wouldn't really be worried about tip strength here, so I like it quite a bit. Anyway, I think someone's coming up the canyon, so I'm going to wrap this up real fast so I don't have to cut it down the middle. Anyways, this has been my first impressions of the Artisan Centauri, and I'm liking it so far. I was right to be intrigued about this one, and I appreciate Kyle sending it along for me to check out, and I wouldn't be that shocked if I end up owning one of these eventually, because it's just a very fun front flipper, and I find it to be functional, easy to carry, goes well in my hand so far. So unless I find out something I'm not crazy about through carrying and using it some more, I think I'm going to end up just kind of really liking this one. Anyway, that'll be that. Thank you guys for checking it out with me. That is the Artisan Centauri.